Okay, so Disney villains have fallen off really hard. They've gone from the likes of being super threatening to being one of the most boring and sterile characters, such as King Magnifico from the new Disney movie Wish. From creepy psychopathic murderers to whatever the hell this guy is, things have gone wrong. So this brings us to our question: what the hell happened to Disney villains? In order to understand this downfall, we're gonna have to compare the old with the new. For example, Scar. In The Lion King, Scar is the brother of Mufasa, who was originally going to be the next in line to assume the throne as king until Mufasa has a kid. Scar is angered by this. Once destined for greatness, it's snagged away from him by a cub. Scar gets jealous of his nephew Simba and decides right there a plot to kill him in order to get the throne. Of course, he's not going to be able to do this alone, as what makes for a good villain is their ability to manipulate the people around them, or in this case, animals. In one of the greatest villain song numbers ever, Scar is able to convince a pair of hyenas, using food as a tool, to work with him on his evil deeds. Of course, Scar is only as good as the actor who portrays him, Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons is able to position Scar to be one of the most threatening Disney villains ever, although he may not be the most magical, nor even the most powerful. Scar always sounds like he's growling every time he talks, making him even more threatening. Hell, even Scar just saying basic sentences makes it seem like he's always conniving, plotting for the next move.
Simba, I'm only looking out for the well-being of my favorite nephew.
Yeah, right. I'm your only nephew.
All the more reason for me to be protective.
Which is more than I can say for the voice actor of the main villain of the new Disney movie Wish, who sounds like, relatively, he's bored.
For Magnifico, we wanted to take inspiration from classic Disney villains, and every great villain needs a great song.
Yeah, the song sucks.
This is the thanks I get!
And listen, I think Chris Pine is a decent actor, overall. But in this movie, he just sounds so uninspired, but I have reason to blame that this is mostly due to the script of the film. While Scar's story is about seeking power and killing in order to obtain that power, here we have the king, who's already in power in Wish, which just makes this kind of boring. What made Scar so great was his plotting in order to become the king. Things are less exciting when the villain of the movie already has everything that he wants. And this isn't just a Scar thing. Think of Ursula from Little Mermaid. Ursula is one of my favorite Disney villains of all time. She was banished from Atlantica by King Triton, biding her time until she could bring a downfall to the king and become queen of Atlantica. Like Scar, she is a master of the art of the deal. She doesn't start off with any power. Instead, she takes stride, creating an agreement with Ariel that if Ariel doesn't kiss the prince in 3 days, she will be forever bound to Ursula. Eventually, Ariel fails in her task, leading to King Triton to have to make an agreement with Ursula in order to save the freedom of his daughter. Triton gives up the throne, leading Ursula to get the crown and become tyrannical as the Queen of the Seven Seas. She becomes huge and becomes super powerful. The building blocks to get to this point is incredible. It's this build-up that makes the villain so satisfying when it comes to the villain seizing power. See, with King Magnifico, he already has all that power. I mean, he's kind of an asshole. He's not necessarily the most evil guy ever. He seeks to keep his power by turning to dark magic, which just ends up corrupting him, making him yearn for even more. He truly is a one-dimensional villain with a backstory that isn't really there. He's almost like a caricature of what a Disney villain should be. They briefly state how Magnifico is trying to protect his own people after losing his entire family, and then we don't really touch on that a lot. This kinda adds to the fact that his villain song kinda sucks. See, with other Disney villain songs, such as the one with Jafar from Aladdin, there's a lot of punch to it. See, Jafar does something incredible here. He reprises Aladdin's main song, Prince Ali, and changes the lyrics to fit with the truth of who Aladdin actually is. So here's the thing about Jafar. He never got his own full-length song while in the movie. Some would say there was a lot of potential. I would argue that this counts as his actual villain song, as ripping on the protagonist's song is just plain evil and also just so good, but I also think it's complimentary of the story as a whole. There's a dichotomy between Aladdin and Jafar. They both seek money and power, starting off with relatively nothing, but both take very different means to achieve that. It makes sense with this backstory in mind that Jafar deserved to rip on Aladdin's song. It is a complete comeuppance of all of Aladdin's lies, implying that if he had just told the truth, Jafar would have never gotten the lamp. Here we have a Disney villain song that's warranted. that isn't forced at all. And then you get back to Wish, where there's a Disney villain song that isn't warranted. This Is the Thanks I Get is one of the worst Disney songs, like, ever. So much so, the top comment for this song on the music video is one that states, "And the crowd went mild." The villain tries to do a maniacal scream at the end, which is like super forced.
This is the thanks I get!
One of the lyrics in the song is him stating,
I let you live it for free and I don't even charge you rent.
like, what? What makes this even more disappointing that after years of not having a Disney villain, we finally get one, and it is one of the most underwhelming experiences of all time. There's an issue when it comes to recent Disney villains. There aren't a lot of them. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are antagonists. Like, for example, in Encanto, you could argue the grandma is an antagonist due to the amount of pressure she puts on her family, but it's not like she's like maniacal or anything. What I'm trying to say is that villains in recent Disney movies have really taken the sideline, with either the main antagonists of the movies not being truly evil, or the conflict being a problem from within. And there's no real major problem with that, just as long as it's done well. And with recent Disney villains, that's really been a hit or a miss. In 2018, we had Ralph Breaks the Internet, where the conflict was Ralph being too over-controlling of his friend. They also make Ralph like really stupid for some reason. The entire movie's frustrating, and really goes against the Ralph we knew from the first movie. It's kinda odd to me there isn't a villain, especially since the first Wreck-It Ralph movie has a really good villain. Spoiler alert, in Wreck-It Ralph, the villain, King Candy, turns out to be a character from another video game whose arcade cabinet was discontinued. He enters the new game Sugar Rush, disguising himself as another character by editing the code of the game. He tries his best to cling on to power, all under the guise of his lies. To add to the horror, he turns into this giant monstrosity near the end of the movie. See, here we have an example of a villain who already has power at the beginning of the movie, who is still incredibly engaging because we're given an incredible backstory. When it comes to King Candy, he doesn't even need a villain song to promote how threatening he actually is. It just seems super, like, underwhelming, because the last time we had an actual villain for a Disney movie was in 2016 for Moana. See, in that movie we actually get two. We get a destructive island goddess, and we also get Tamatoa, who's more of a secondary villain in the movie, but honestly outshines the main villain even more. Mostly because the David Bowie inspired song. Seriously, this is one of the catchiest Disney songs ever made. He really doesn't have much of a backstory, he's just a giant crab, but I think that's what adds to the charm of him. While King Magnifico is seen to be charismatic, in reality there's really no substance there to enjoy him as a villain. Tamatoa is actually kind of epic though, cause he's cheeky and comedic. He loves bragging about how great he is, being an incredible narcissist who is arrogant and also a murderer. See, with Magnifico he likes talking about how great he is in his villain song, but as you can see in the post-release of Wish, no one's really given him any real fanfare. It is in this reason where I think Disney may have forgotten how to write an actual good villain. I mean, it has been 7 years since Moana has come out. Some people hate the trend that recent Disney movies have been doing, where there hasn't exactly been a main villain. I feel like they've done this mostly well, but then you have Disney movies like Strange World that come out where there's no villain and it feels like nothing's going on in the plot really. Okay, scratch that. The main antagonist is actually this thing called the Reaper, which are like aliens that want to protect their own planet, but once again, there's no real character there, it's really more like nothing. And that's what Strange World really is. It's a very nothing movie alongside Wish, which is also a really nothing movie, with, dare I say, a very nothing villain. Disney villains have fallen off, and hopefully they'll find a way of recreating the magic of, say, Scar, Jafar, or even Ursula. Until then, like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.